Hi, good morning. It's Jim from Mavstar Observatory. Yesterday we talked about quite a lot of things, and I think when you do that, you miss some of the key components of what is taking place. And what I didn't want to happen yesterday, and I think it might have, is give too much information, and each component of that information that we was talking about yesterday might not have been completely realised. I just wanted to generalise it in this video and probably talk about a few of the components over the next few days, so we really nail it and we understand what's going on. Before we do, big thank you to the few that support us. We're coming to the end of the month. It doesn't look like we're going to even break even again. I can't keep saying it, guys. If we don't all work together and we don't support this in some form of monetary fashion, then it's going to be impossible for us to do more. And on the back of that, I just want to say, we've done a lot already on a very small budget. We're not asking to raise thousands and thousands of pounds here, just a little bit each month, and we can keep things going and probably expand into a few other regions. So let's get on with the video. You can see that there's four major active zones on our planet. The three are in the pink, two over the northern hemisphere, one on the southern hemisphere. Those are the main and highest intensities. We also have that darker blue region just south of the Atlantic, covering Brazil and breaking off into Africa. That's your mid-Atlantic anomaly. In terms of microteslers that you see on the scale here, it's around 20 or 20,000 nanoteslers. Over Canada, we got around 55,000 nanoteslers. In Russia, 60,000 nanoteslers. And the reason why the North Pole is migrating at the rate it is for two reasons. And you can see that on the top left disk and the lower center disk. That is because Russia's intensity is increasing, and the intensity over Canada is reducing. What's happening over in the southern hemisphere, over Australia, is what you may not think. People are in the belief that the poles are racing towards each other over the southern hemisphere and the epicenter over Russia. They believe that they're coming together, but if you look at it, yes, Russia is advancing down, but at the same rate it's advancing down. You can see the high intensity peeling off the south peninsula of Australia. So the reason why these points of intensities are interesting at the moment is because what is taking place over the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere with regards to sub-zero temperatures. Those temperatures that usually are around 35 to 40 degrees Celsius. It seems that on these epicenters of high intensity, we have the coldest regions on the planet. And it seems that what we're looking at over the northern hemisphere is an increase in the cold, tending towards where we think the magnetic North Pole is going to be at some short time in the distance over Russia. So let's have a look at the other map where we've pointed out these areas of interest more clearly. So what I wanted to just concentrate on here is two things: magnetic intensity over certain regions where we've circled, and temperature in those regions that we've circled. We've also indicated two arrows on all these maps, one just above the United Kingdom and one pointing at Brazil, because these are warmer areas where the magnetic intensity is lower, and you don't get no lower intensity than what we're looking at on the bottom left over Brazil right now, and the South Atlantic Ocean going over towards Africa. And I think the reason for that is obviously what is regulating the colder temperatures is magnetic intensity. The higher the intensity, the cooler that region is. And this could give a new meaning to, those theories that have suggested that, the Arctic regions of our planet have been in tropical regions before, because of, we find crude oil in these regions. And in order for crude oil to have formed at some point, there must have been trees millions of years ago that had fallen. And, those trees were growing in tropical regions. So, this could explain why, when we look at the paleology of our planet, whilst comparing the samples we've got, we see that, the climate of the Earth today has not been the same as what it was thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions of years ago. And what could have regulated those temperature changes in those regions at that point may well have been magnetic reversals. So, if we are now, I think compounding this theory that where the highest intensities are is also where the Antarctic and Arctic climates are on this planet, then that gives us an idea of what to expect during the next magnetic reversal. Because certainly if the poles are migrating, and whilst they're doing that, they are taking the Arctic climates along with them, then we have got an idea, if we know the direction of which the pole is migrating in, where the direction of that new Antarctic climate will be. And certainly over the northern hemisphere right now, it looks as though it is heading just below the Arctic Circle in Russia. So further below Russia, China, and going in towards the Mediterranean, we are going to see it start getting cooler. I was looking at North School today at the temperature over the world, and I suggested in a couple of videos ago that it might be a good idea to migrate somewhere below over the northern hemisphere, below 40 degrees. Well, if you look at the temperature over the Earth today, you'll see that all surrounding the Mediterranean right now is in sub-zero temperatures. Minus up to 10 degrees Celsius, which is shocking because, most of Europe depend on these regions usually for growing crops. And if we just look over the United States, we'll see that almost all the way down to the Gulf, it is in sub-zero temperatures again. When you think about it, how much land is used in the United States for growing crops, that's quite a lot. And if we are merging into a glacial period at some point in the near future, then this is going to be not just a seasonal cold that we see over the northern and southern hemispheres. This is going to be a prolonged winter to start with, where the winters get longer and longer, the temperatures get more severe, records get broken more frequently, and eventually that land over the northern hemisphere above 40 degrees latitude is no longer able to support crop production. And then that just leaves us with an equatorial region, which will cool as well. And not because of its single orbit around the sun, but the Milankovitch cycle. We are going to be experiencing, a progressive decay in global temperatures from now on. And that's a good thing, because it's going to slap these climate alarmists in the face that are arguing that, first of all, we're going into a global warming, and second of all, all these new carbon taxes are going to have to be squashed at some point, because it will no longer support what they're saying. I mean, it doesn't now in any case. CO2 is not what's driving the climate. The climate drives CO2. When we looked at the cycles a few days ago, over the last 400,000 years, there was 5 interglacial periods, and each one of those lasts for around, on average, 100,000 years. So our Earth spends most of its time in sub-zero temperatures, and that is exactly what we are going back into now. And I think it's quite alarming, to say the least, that we are going to start, as we already have started to see, food prices going through the roof, and not enough is being done, because it's not just food production that is going to get hit by an increase in sub-zero temperatures, it's going to be at some point grid failures, and that changes public rest in a lot of countries, because when the grid goes down and for prolonged periods of time, society usually, as we've seen, breaks down shortly after that. You could see, if grids start failing all over the United States, over Europe and in the UK, you could see wide public unrest, to say the least. I know what I would be expecting to see, similar behaviour that was witnessed during the last blockade of Stalingrad in the 1940s, where people turned very quickly to cannibalism, because if the only thing that is walking around edible is a human being, then that is what people tend to eat, and that is exactly what was the case back in the 1940s, which was only about 85 years ago at that, or something like that. But my point is this, is it doesn't take very long for the behaviour of people to start, acting like that. And if you think that mentality doesn't no longer exist, well, there are recent documentaries that was done about planes crashing in the Andes, and there was multiple survivors, and they was waiting for rescue for weeks and weeks and weeks, ended up spending months on the mountain, and it wasn't long before they turned to, first of all, eating the dead. And this is something that we would probably do, put in the right circumstances. So we have a lot of things all coinciding, and we are at a point in time where we're very heavily reliant on all the technology that we have, and that is very vulnerable to all these changes that are taking place. And I don't see any preparation on a large scale where governments are trying to ensure the survival of human continuity at a large end scale. And we've seen lots of these deep underground military bases and cities that have been created, and I don't think we're lucky enough to get on that lottery for a position down in those. And we do know that some countries now are no longer doing it secretively, they are stockpiling foods. To name one, China. China has stockpiled, I think, over the last 12 months, 61% of the total maize output for the world. That's a lot, isn't it? So, I just want to answer someone's question. Someone said, well, the temperature on the top left and the magnetic intensity on the bottom left don't match perfectly. It does over the northern hemisphere, it doesn't over the southern hemisphere, but I just want to point out something. It does. First of all, the circles on the northern hemisphere are directly over two regions of sub-zero temperature or Arctic climates that have gone to the scale of purple. So it's around about minus 35 to 40 degrees Celsius in those two regions, and there is only one magnetic intensity in the southern hemisphere. That is the one you can see coming off the or just moving onto the territory of Australia. Again, if you go up to the temperature chart above that, you'll see that where that has been ringed is in the region over the southern hemisphere, which is the coldest, in the purple. If you look to the left lower of the temperature chart on the top of the screen, you'll see that there's not so much purple, so it's highly concentrated on the one side of Antarctica and not on the other. So it is 3 out of 3. And there is another reason why it all looks like it's been pushed over to the one end of Antarctica, and that is probably because of the anomaly that we've got there in the South Atlantic Ocean, which is the South Atlantic Anomaly, which is that region around 20,000 nanoteslas, as opposed to that which is on the other side of the Antarctic Peninsula, which is in the region of about 57,000 nanoteslas. So it fits, it really does fit. First of all, one of the warmest regions over the northern hemisphere, as you can see, is just where the United Kingdom sits, and it goes a little bit further up over to Greenland. And then another warm region of our planet, which you would expect to be in any case, is near the equatorial region, and that is where our other arrow points to the continent of Brazil. So the temperature does certainly point out where the magnetic intensities are. So if we was only looking at temperature and we've got no further imagery from SWARM, at least we know that where the coldest temperatures are on our planet is where the highest intensity magnetism is. That's all I'm saying. But it is interesting to see what will happen over the next 14 months with regards to that 40-degree mark that we are rapidly approaching. And I'm expecting to see an increase in speed and some abnormal behaviour where it goes forward a lot further, backwards a lot further, and then possibly crosses over into the weak field lines and migrates much quicker. We just don't know. But what we're trying to do is get an idea of where the best places are going to be on our planet. And with regards to sub-zero temperatures on the increase, I think at the moment those better regions would be at the equatorial region, only for the fact that it'd be warmer there. But then you've got droughts, floods, and all those things, other things that climate throws at us to deal with. And if there was a point in time where everyone panicked in the northern hemisphere and headed down towards the equatorial region, then you would be trying to survive along the side of many millions. And this is why I've said a few times it might be a good idea to get yourself situated coastally, because even if the oceans freeze up, you can still bore down into the oceans and fish for food, just the same as the Inuits do, or the Eskimos over the northern hemisphere. It is a way of life, and it certainly is a very testing way of life. But people do it, and they do live in those conditions year in, year out, and have done for many generations. And that's probably one of the options that I would probably think about. So I had someone comment in the video the other day, you are still in the UK when you should be getting below the 40-degree latitude somewhere into a safer region. My idea was not to head south at all, it was to head north, because I know that there'd be less people heading that direction, and I certainly don't want to be on the menu for any any group of people that have converted over to cannibalism. I just don't want to be that. You might have a little chuckle to yourself at that, but trust me, I don't think it would take much for people to resort to that sort of way of life. I don't think it would take very much. You do some pretty unusual things, and you'll put some unusual food types in your mouth when you are close to starving to death. I'm talking about eating snakes, real raw survival methods. You'll eat anything, and if you think you won't eat human beings, well, I'll just say it's just a matter of time and desperation, I suppose. Okay guys, we're going to leave it here, but consider what I said at the beginning of the video. If we all chip in here, we can all get something out. If everybody's waiting for somebody else to do it, then I can guarantee you no one will. So if we don't raise funds, this research comes to a massive grinding halt. I've done my best here at this end to make sure we don't disbar anybody from this information, and the only way we can continue doing that is by all of us just chipping in a little bit here and there and working together. Guys, the only way humans are going to survive is if we work together, that's for sure, and that has been the case always. So I'll say what I usually do, you take care of your loved ones, and we'll come back in a couple of days, and I'll say what I usually do. Bye for now.